Are we in?
We're in.
We're in, man. There he is. The fish I caught last week with Captain Nick Noon.
Farthest thing from a captain.
You're not a captain.
No.
Oh, okay. From Nick, with Nick Noon. Anyway, Yellowfin tuna. Okay, there he is. That's what we're all looking for, and we're going to talk about it right now. Here we go. It's 2021, and people are getting jumped by yellowfin tunas over in the channel, right?
Oh yeah.
So
They'll hurt you.
we want to talk to you about what's happening over in the channel, Northwest Providence Channel, between Lucaya, Great Isaac's Light, and that area back there. That's where the locals here in South Florida and Central Florida really go over to target yellowfins. Personally, never been a huge fan of a yellowfin tuna. Why? Because I got skunked so many times doing it. When I was younger, it was such a pain in the ass to me. Oh, we're going to chase birds again, man. Forget, put the stuff out. You'd ride around burning a bunch of fuel and catch nothing. That was really, for me, for years on the concrete machine. I don't think, we'd see him. Bill always wanted to put him out, our stuff out. Knowing what I know now, didn't even have a chance of getting a bite.
Catching skipjacks.
Right. So anyway, prior to this film, or after this film, I would encourage you to go watch the Yellowfin Tuna Seminar with Mark Hamilton, Tristan Hunt. They talk about logistically rigging techniques and all this stuff. Right now, Nick has made several trips this year over to the channel. And what month is it?
We were April.
Okay.
First week of April.
It's early.
Early.
Talk about, so is that when it starts for yellowfin tuna in the channel?
I would say the last week of March and the first 2 to 3 weeks of April. Last two weeks of March and the first 2 weeks of April the past 3 or 4 years have been the best fishing.
Best fishing?
Yes.
Okay.
Some guys say the sharks aren't bad that time of year. Other people say the sharks are just as bad.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in the past 2 weeks, I've gone 3 times and we've done phenomenal every trip. 1 or 2 shark bites. Last trip we never had a shark bite, never saw a shark.
Mm-hmm.
Other people come in the shop and they went twice and they haven't got one past the sharks.
Interesting. We do have a shark problem. The shark problem you're talking about is the sharks eating the tuna.
Correct.
Okay, so
I think the major issue of the sharks eating your tunas is that you're chumming too heavy with your sardines. Sardines attract the yellowfins. They work phenomenal for the yellowfins.
Okay.
But they're also attracting the sharks. The 5-gallon bucket that you have your 25 pounds of sardines in
Right.
has 6 inches of blood and oil that those sharks are smelling from 20, 30 miles away, and you're halfway through your 2-hour-long drift of catching 1 or 2 here and there, and then the sharks get real bad and you have a tiger shark and a bull shark and you're not getting them past it.
Mm-hmm.
If you throw a couple hundred pilchards in the water, last time I checked, sharks aren't really busting up live bait schools
Right.
of pilchards.
Right. Interesting.
They might smell the pilchards, they might sense them, but I think they know it's not as easy of a meal to where they're not going to be as aggressive. To where the last 3 trips we've gone, we bring about 2,000 pilchards with us and almost don't have a shark issue at all. But the guy next to me has 50 pounds of sardines slowly going in the water, and talked to him on Facebook the next night, and they catch 1 and we catch 12.
So, to recap, so you go over.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetical situation, we're leaving tomorrow morning. We're in South Florida. At some inlet. We run over, it takes you an hour to 3 hours to get there. The sun's coming up. You see birds. You're doing your thing. You have how many pilchards in your boat if you had to, minimum to be effective?
To feel confident?
Yes.
In a full day of tuna fishing?
Yes.
1,500 to 2,000.
Okay.
And that's realistically not enough to me, but On
Okay.
average, that's what the average boat can hold.
1,500.
1,500 to 2,000.
Tell me, in what size of a well is holding that many baits? What do you need on your boat to do that?
120 gallons. And that's your well is blacked out. You open the live well and 20, 30 baits are falling out.
Okay, 120 gallons minimum to hold that kind of bait.
Yeah.
Okay.
Realistically, you should have more to take good care of your bait, to where if you're having a weekend trip and you're staying there overnight, you're going to have a lot of dead loss if you have 2,000 baits in your well for more than 12 hours.
Okay, and most of your baits are hand caught.
We try for that.
Right.
You want your bait's your most important thing. You want them to be as healthy as possible.
Right. So the most frustrating thing for me, okay, and why I love when Nick calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to go tomorrow?" Because he's been catching bait for 3 days for this outing, going down to Miami catching bait, spending all these hours just to catch the bait. Now all of a sudden we get over, we start chucking bait in the water, and and half the time not catching them, coming home after it's really a 2 to 3 to 4 day event to go do this.
If you're catching your own bait,
Yes.
a yellowfin tuna trip is a 5 to 6 day excursion.
It's freaking crazy
Yeah, a lot of work goes into them.
to catch it, but when you're
I'm
catching
really
them by hand.
when I catch them by hand and I have 2,000 pristine pilchards that you don't lose one on the way over,
Mhm.
you have a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
They're really lively. You throw them in the water, they're fired up. They're skipping on the surface.
You
Gets
know
the
you're
tunas
going to get
fired
bit.
up.
So you've had success on all the trips so far in 2021. Now I'm going to ask you some rough questions, man. I'm looking for honesty.
Okay.
No BSing. To the regular guy,
Yes.
okay, doesn't fish as much as we do. Fishes one time a week, maybe one time every 2 weeks, wants to do this trip, because what's happening is guys are coming in and saying, "Hey, cool, I'm going to go do that in my boat."
Mm-hmm.
Nick, what are the chances that you're going to go in your boat and catch them?
It's a vague question because what type of boat do they have?
Okay.
Is it an 18-foot pro line? Or
Okay.
is it a
Let's make it real.
39-foot yellowfin?
Okay, let's just say that I do have the ability to have the bait.
Mm-hmm.
I got 1,500 pilchards. I got a 34 Invincible.
Okay.
It's got the well space. We're going over, and what are my chances of finding them and catching them?
If you have a good radar, call it a 6 kW and larger, and it's calm conditions to where you're going to be able to mark some stuff 4 to 6 miles away, and you have 2,000 pilchards, and you're in March or April, I think you have a very high chance of catching them.
Really?
At least hooking up to them.
Okay.
A lot of people struggle getting them to the boat. You think you have a lot of drag on the fish, but you really don't.
Mm-hmm.
All of my reels have tape on them saying, okay, there's 16 here, there's 22 here, there's 25 pounds
of drag
there. And after that first initial run, and we know they're hooked, you usually have 25 pounds of drag on it. And most people think, oh yeah, I have 25 pounds of drag on this fish. No, you have about 16, and that's not shit.
Right, for sure.
And you're fighting a fish that you should be fighting for 15 to 20 minutes.
Max,
but you're fighting it for 35, 40 minutes.
and what happens then?
Oh, there it is, it's spinning, and then that shark that's been swimming in the radius of your boat for the past hour comes up and eats it, and you slam your rod against the gunnel and you're pissed off for the rest of the day.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Okay, so I went with Nick 2 weeks ago, okay? Obviously, you know I'm taking everything in. We got a boat that's fast. We got wells that are pretty much stacked. Couple things I thought about, and as we were going through the day, I want to give you my feelings about yellowfin tuna fishing in 2021 right now in the month of March, where we went and had success.
Mm-hmm.
But here are the observations after doing it. Couple things. This is my opinion. Even if you're set up correctly, if you're set up correctly to go for yellowfin tuna and your goal is to catch that and you're a decent fisherman with an okay crew, okay, and we're going to talk about that for a second, I'm going to give you a 35% chance. That's all I'm giving you. 35% chance of catching them, okay? Why do I say that? Because reports. Guys are constantly calling us. They're coming in for chunks. They're coming in for flats. They're giving us a report. Yesterday, Manny's over there. He can't find the birds. He's got a good radar. It's not tweaked right. He doesn't really know how to rate. The ingredients of what he's saying is you have to have all of those, because if you miss one of those, meaning if your radar sucks or you do not know how to read a radar, birds on a radar, meaning you don't know how to tweak your gain on your radar within X amount of miles so that you can read birds on it, and you don't have that ability to do that, then you're almost already out of the game. Meaning, guys, I'm doing this with Nick. We're driving and we're looking at these spots. And go back to Tristan and those guys talking about birds. That's not for this film. But what I'm telling you is the ingredients to be able to find the birds, which then you're going to find the fish. If you don't have that ingredient, you're out of the mix. And most guys don't know how to read that or set their controls or electronics to be able to read that. You agree with that?
100%.
Okay. So you just took 30% of the guys who can catch them out of it. Okay.
The trip that we went on together
Yes.
was the first trip that boat's ever done yellowfin tuna fishing.
Yes.
So you can't really tune in your radar off Fort Lauderdale on
That's
a flock
right.
of birds because, one, there's a few birds around.
Great point.
To where, yeah, we fished a couple times out front, just dolphin and whatever, running out to the sort grounds, turn the radar on, and try to key it in a little bit. But you're not keying it in properly until there's a flock of 8 or 9 tuna birds diving on the surface in the channel, because you're not really seeing that out front here.
That's right. That type of bird.
You can kind of get it set a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but the second trip we did, we were marking birds 8 miles away. When we were with you, the whole day we were trying to key it in
Mm-hmm.
to where now the radar's set, we have the correct gain. It's between like
But
80 and 86.
it's a fine deal with
Oh
it.
yeah, you're moving the gain by 1%.
Right.
And as you open up your radar to a wider distance, you need to change your gain to get it effective.
Okay. That's another film, just tweaking that.
And you have to spend the time.
No.
And you
No.
have to have a radar man, as I call it. Someone's constantly staring at it as you're running.
What was funny about it, and I don't know if you remember this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we caught a pile of fish in the morning.
Yes,
We found a floater,
we did.
something floating. We go by, we catch a dolphin, I think.
Yep.
While we're there, there's an edge. We see an edge.
Yes.
Current edge. Weed line. Well,
A textbook beautiful dolphin catching edge. A little bit of weed. There was a hatch to a boat.
right. But when you have that, obviously there's an edge. There's two currents meeting. That's a prime place to be able to find yellowfin tuna.
Yes.
And while I remember saying to Nick, hey man, let's cruise up this edge for a little bit. We weren't even looking at the radar. We were looking for dolphin, but it looks so fishy. So we're going up the edge.
Yep.
3 minutes later, we see a flock of birds off our port side. You say, wind that stuff in, we're going for yellowfin. Agreed?
Agreed.
So what I would say to you is, guys, if you don't know how to dial your radar in, okay? If you can't dial your radar in, if you don't have the crew and anglers to be able to deal with it, okay? Now what does that mean? What I noticed is, what I'm noticing with a lot of these guys, hey man, I want to go yellowfin fishing with you. Okay, great. Who are you taking? Okay. You know where I'm going with this.
Of course.
Where am I going with this?
You have to have a little bit of a skilled crew to go catch these things.
Okay. Expand on it, man.
You can't have 3 guys all hooking baits and setting them off the bow of the. You have to have a lot of organization.
Okay?
Very organized when you're doing this, because you have a matter of moments to get the boat positioned right and get baits in the water and fish it effectively in front of the birds or next to the birds before they're 100 yards that way. And you're still trying to cut your mahi lure off to put a circle hook on
Right.
to fire a bait out. Up, where are the hooks?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you have to have a crew that kind of gets it, or you better be real. If they don't really get it, you better have everything laid out very well to where these are your 4 mahi rods, these are your 6 tuna rods, and as soon as you start reeling in your stuff from trolling around the school of birds, they need to be tucked away.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the one with the weight, you're chunking, and you're firing this one out,
Mhm.
and there's no bullshit.
Okay. I'm gonna take it a step further, and I'm gonna say you don't kind of need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're doing. Here's what I see, okay? And I know this for a fact, being in this tackle store and seeing who comes in and who's serious about fishing, who's not. When you go to do something and spend that kind of money, okay? He just told you it was 5 frickin' days to catch bait, okay? 5 days to catch bait. Now I'm running over 30 to 40 knots burning. I mean, the fuel tank's just going down. This is an expensive frickin' trip. And I asked you the other day, well, what did it cost to go do that? Like, $5,000's not even enough. $5,000 for the day to do that, where the way we do it out of South Florida, that's not enough money to pay for that. So what I'm going to tell you is this. You better have hypothetically created your situation of what you're going to do when we get into the birds, because when it happens, you got 30 seconds, okay? 30 seconds, and you're going to capitalize and make your day right now, or you're not, and you're going to catch 2. You either catch your limit, which is 12 pelagics you're allowed to catch there, or you're going to catch 2. One will get bit by a shark and the other one probably get bit too, because you don't have the crew to be able to deal with it. Now, when he talked about drag, you're fighting fish too long. You don't have enough drag on them, okay? I want to make it simple, because the logistics of the rigs and how you fish for yellowfins, go watch that seminar. It's 2.5 hours. But here's the fact. You're fighting fish too long. Your fish are getting eaten. You're throwing too many chunks over the side. The sharks are sitting there waiting for it. Are chunks effective? Yes, they can be effective. Unfortunately, the later in the season it gets, what happens?
More sharks definitely start honing in on the tunas.
They do.
Yeah, because
So
you've been feeding them for
there's boats going over.
3 months now, and they want their easy meal.
You get a guy on the boat. We get into, let's create that scenario. Nick, there's the birds. Great, man, let's pull in. I know what I'm supposed to do. Nick's driving the boat. He shuts it down. We pull it out. We throw a handful of baits. We throw a couple off the motors so that the baits are actually spinning in a circle. What happens is that pilchard's doing a circle in the actual wash here. So fish are coming to the surface. If you just throw pilchards a lot of times and you don't stun one or take an eyeball out of one, they all swim, okay? And this is a game of seconds. I need to capitalize right now. So Nick grabs a rod because he knows how to fish. He throws it out. He's got a flat line. He's pulling it off. I got one hooked in the throat. I'm going down with mine. As we're doing it, I'm hooked up. I look over, Nick's hooked up. And the other 2 guys are still trying to get their pilchard that keeps wanting to swim away from the boat. I just can't get the pilchard to swim away from the boat. Okay, now we got fish on. These 2 guys can't even get the pilchard away from the boat because we're using Talica 25s. 50s. And they can't really cast it out there, or they're not pulling it in enough. So now you just lost 2 guys out of the game because they don't even know what they're basically doing. Can't get the pilchard away from the boat. Now, after a 5-day thing, I'm looking at these 2 guys like, why did we even bring them? Now, I'm just creating a scenario. This didn't happen on our boat. But that's
It
the.
happens on people's boats.
This is what's
on a daily
happening.
basis,
You're bringing
though.
2 guys from Wisconsin, man. They don't know what the hell's going on. 25 pounds of drag on a frickin'. They never felt. These guys are river guys. Put someone on your boat that you can stack up right now, because in that 15 to 20 second window, you're making the day or you're done. You are done. You're catching nothing else. This is your shot. You got them up. You got them up. Keep them up. Who's your bait guy throwing bait? There's one guy on our boat doesn't even hold the rod.
In the heat of the moment, you can't forget that your live baits and chunks are what is keeping the school from not going back down to 300 feet. Because every time you pull up on these fish, it's rare that they're already on the surface.
That's right.
You pull up and on your screen you see them 150, 200 feet, 300 feet below the boat. And when you're getting your bites, they're in the 20 to 60 foot range on average. And, okay, yeah, look, that's awesome. He soaked up off the bow. You got a guy with a gaff and the other guy that was supposed to be chunking is just freaking stoked videoing for his wife. And next thing you know, it's like,
It's over.
Okay, this one's in the boat. Now he's got his in the boat. Fuck yeah, everybody's doing high fives. Do we even have a line in the water still?
Right.
You know,
It's over.
it happens.
That's
It's
right.
happened to me.
Yes, because
And-
you're in the heat of the moment. You want to see the fish. Look, hey, look at the yellowfin down there spilling.
And then when you get home and you have 5 fish and you're still stoked.
Yes.
But then you go and talk to someone else and they caught 16. It's like, damn, what did we do wrong? Well, while we were fighting 2 fish, Jack over there was videoing when he should have been firing out another bait while he was still
Frickin'
chunking.
Jack. It's always about.
It's-
There's always a Jack.
Fucking jackwagon, dude.
Okay, watch your language. We're on national TV here.
See,
We're not. That's the truth. You don't take guys who can't do this on your boat. If you want to do that, you're already shooting yourself in the foot. It's hard enough to figure out a frickin' radar. Spend 5 days getting ready, catching bait, and going over there, keeping them alive. Now you put somebody on your boat that's not qualified. He's only hurting you. Now you're talking about 2 fish or no fish against guys who come back with 12 fish and are hand feeding them and they're so stoked. Okay, and truly, that's what I see. Most guys aren't capitalizing when they get the time when they can.
You gotta, the whole day of tuna fishing, you need to be game planning in your head
Hypothetical situation.
for every situation. You gotta think of whoever's in charge needs to act like he's a coach almost.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Great,
everybody's having a position. And like I tell people all the time, I'm not really yelling at you,
man. Yep.
but we're here to be successful. We've spent days of catching bait and we just ran 130 miles. I'm not yelling at you if I tell you to throw the freaking chunks or whatever.
Right.
But let's keep going, guys. Let's be positive.
And
And
that's a great point, guys. Go back through the films. That is what he's telling you is everything. To me, it's the most frustrating thing. It's hard for me to fish with people that don't really fish, unless I'm in a charter situation. We're not talking about charters here. We're talking about taking your boat, your fuel, your money, your investment in time and people. And you got to have a guy on your boat, and he kind of controls it. He's not afraid to say what he has to say.
the most seasoned person on the boat, whoever has the most experience, before you leave the inlet, you kind of have to have a powwow with your crew.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, if I'm tied up with a fish in the back corner and you just got yours in, make sure you're cutting 6 feet of leader off and retiring your hook so that we don't have a 6 foot chafed up leader. And we're like, why aren't we getting bit? They're freaking busting off the bow of the boat because your leader's smoked up and it looks like you have a piece of cable now on your shit.
Yeah.
So when you get that fish in the boat, and I turn back and I'm like, cut the freaking leader off because you're not doing it. Don't take it the wrong way. But everybody on the boat needs to hold everybody accountable for what they're doing to be successful. You follow me?
100%. To me, it's not even a question. Which brings me to this. You got 4 tuna rods set up. You need, to me, if you have 4 guys, you got to have 8 rods. You have to have rods ready to go. You're in that 2-minute window of fish feeding. Guy catches one, guy catches two. You've got to capitalize now. Cutting, retying, doing all that can't happen in the mix of the melee right then, usually. Agreed with that?
100%.
You got to have other rods ready. You stick that rod down, I'm already firing another bait out. It's a game of seconds. That's how, we're not in Louisiana. We're not in some of those places where it's a lot easier to catch a fish, probably, than it is for us. When it comes to yellowfin. And I'm not taking anything away from the guys there. What I'm telling you specific to the way we're fishing and these birds moving around and the inconsistencies of this fishery and the shark problem that we have that they don't have over there, that's what gets frustrating. So understand all these points that he's talking to you about, seasoned crew, enough bait, reading the radar, those are huge things. And guys, most guys aren't doing that. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. You don't have the rods, you don't have the tackle, you don't have the setup, and I'm going to stick with my 35% as high. As high for 30. I'm going to go that 35.
50%.
You're going 50%. So you're going to say that I'm going to go over there and if I'm set up correctly, I'm going to catch 50% of the time.
I personally think so. Yeah.
Which is great. It's like I said in the beginning. This has always been a frustrating fishery for me. It's tough. It's expensive. People are spending a lot of time and effort and energy, and they're coming back with nothing in hand or losing them to sharks because of drag issues, crew issues. And again, for me, it is frustrating, but you look at this, man. Once you put that on the boat once, let's pick this up again, Nick. Dude, you put that on the boat like we did last week, and that'll change the way you feel about it, because if you go 3 trips and don't catch them, the 4th trip when you do catch this one, man, it's like you're hooked. You're freaking done. Right now, you're hooked.
Oh, I'm hooked every year.
He's done.
March, April, May.
All he does is talk about tuna. I'm over it. Actually, what was really interesting, we're starting to see him on our side now. John, one of our customers, caught a 168-pounder last week on a planer. Took 2 hours to catch him. We're seeing these over here, but man, what a fish it is. And I got to tell you, we're going to talk a little bit more about it here in 1 second.